So hello and welcome to this webinar about Silverleaf Nightshade. Thank you everyone for taking the time out of your evening to join us. My name is Jessica Vallo and I work as a landscape officer for the Northern and York Landscape Board. I'd especially like to thank Dr. Hanwen Wu and Chris Butler, who are joining us tonight as our guest speakers. Hanwen is a principal researcher with New South Wales Department of Primary Industries and was the co-author of the 68-page Best Practice Management Manual for Silverleaf Nightshade. So we're very lucky to have him come along tonight and give us some of his expertise. And Chris Butler is the owner of Roseworthy Rural Supplies and has over 35 years of industry experience, which we'll be able to tap into tonight. The structure of the evening will include a talk from Hanwen, followed by a brief talk about 4 extra weeds to be on the lookout for by myself. And then Chris will close with a discussion about chemicals for use. And I did see him bring into the office tonight a few aids to help him. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he's got to show us. Each session will be followed by an opportunity for our speakers to answer any questions. So Hanwen, go for gold.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica, for your invitation, and thank you everybody for coming to this webinar. Yeah, I have been spending, well, I think at least 10 years on this Silverleaf Nightshade, together with John Heap, who retired a couple of years ago from Saudi. And in between, John and I, we certainly have a lot of fun together, chasing the field side and with all sort of control options. So I think about 4 or 5 years ago, I think I did quite a bit show and tell in South Australia, in Clare, Cleve, Coomanduk, Adelaide, and also Straubing. So I've been doing quite a bit of workshop over there already. So today I'm just basically going to go through with you and share how much our understanding we have on Silverleaf Nightshade. And certainly our co-presenter, Chris, will give you a bit more details on chemical control options. This weed actually was listed as a weed of national significance back in 2012 due to its national impacts and also because it's highly invasiveness. And I actually went to a few areas in South Australia, and this photo actually took from South Australia. I think this paddy was about 4,000 acres. It's a grazing property and all under Silverleaf Nightshade. As you can imagine, the productivity of this grazing area is just going to be quite limited. And yeah, impact of the Silverleaf Nightshade depend on the level of infestations. It certainly can cause you yield loss and partial production loss. And sometimes as heavy as that sort of photo I show is going to be 100% yield loss. And it's a host of a range of different weed species or different pests and viruses and diseases. And interestingly, this Silverleaf Nightshade has been reported poisonous to stock overseas only. As far as I understand, I haven't been hearing any sort of stock poisoning in Australia so far. And also there was a feeding trial back in 1980s in Victoria. They also wasn't be able to pick up any sort of food poisoning to sheep. I just want to highlight the impact of Silverleaf Nightshade on property values, because and also the marketability of the properties. We have been doing lots of workshop across country. A lot of workshop participants actually highlight the value of the property can be half due to the presence of the Silverleaf Nightshade. Of course, depend on the level of infestation. And a lot of participants also comment about the market. On the market, it's going to take to sell the property. And as you can see, this weed growth is quite impressive. It actually can grow through the belt, so can easily over 1 or 2 meters. So at the moment, on the left-hand side, basically is current distribution of the Silverleaf Nightshade. But on the right-hand side, based on the model predictions, it can potentially affect the entire cropping belt, which is about 300 or 400 million hectares based on the model prediction. We did a sample survey, I think about 10 years ago. So we traveled from the north, starting from southern Queensland all the way up to South Australia. And also I didn't include the Western Australia, but we collected lots of samples and we took lots of photos. And the next few slides, I want to share you the variations we have. So these are the predominant color of Silverleaf Nightshade with purple color, the 5 petals. But sometimes you are seeing white flowers. However, there's a mosaic, a suite of different petal numbers and different colors of the petals, across the board. And this photo show you sometimes we are seeing different color colonies in the paddy. And the most striking difference is in terms of leaf shape and size. So as you can see from the quite broad fat leaves to the quite narrow pointing leaves. So this because the different shape and size of leaves in different areas. So if you have a biotype with a broad leaf as compared to a biotype with a narrow leaves, and certainly your herbicide interception going to be different, and that will result in difference in terms of control. And also we come up with a challenge with different shape and form of the berries. And on the far left side, this is a native quina. As you can see, native quina has the green stripe as compared to all these green tiger stripes on the berries. So it can be quite confusing in the field if we're not really knowing the contrasting features. Now I'm going to show you there are some critical features explaining why this is so difficult to control. So on the left-hand side, I'm not sure you've seen this photo before. These are beautiful star-shaped hairs on the leaf surface. And as you can see, these are from the upper one, there are multiple layers of the hairs supporting each other, overlapping each other. The problem is these hairs are dead tissues, and they are also water repellent. So that's why we're having difficulties in getting chemicals through onto the leaf surface, into the plant to kill the weed. And also because the presence of these hairs on the leaves, that's why it gives us a silver-looking appearance on the leaves. So this is one physical barriers of control. The second one is perennial weeds. It's quite different to many annual weeds like ryegrass, wild radish, or barley grass, broom grass. This one have most problem is coming from the root system. It's a perennial root. Either if you kill with soft herbicide, even kill with a paraquat, or even burning or slashing or grazing, you'll be just burning the top off. And in the coming years, in the good soil moisture conditions and temperatures, it will just reshoot. So year in, year out, if we don't have good control, it's going to come out with the mostly will be from the root system. And then on the right-hand side, it also can come from the berries, the seeds. The seedling emergence is quite what you call opportunistic. It need a good soil moisture for at least 7 days, and need a cool temperature conditions. So I actually been thinking this year, because we have quite a bit of rainfall in the past since spring. So I'm imagining there will be quite a lot of seedling emerging in the field already. So these are the big difference. Yeah, if you want to see what sort of seedlings or what sort of plant coming out from roots, or is this one coming from seeds? This is basically quite different. And quite often you will see seedlings coming out as a bunch, because they're coming out from one single berries, and one single berry will have at least 40 seeds. And another problem is the spread. The main problem is number one problem is the grazing. I think that in the past we've been grazing at the wrong time, and graze when berry already formed, and then berry just went through the gut and passed out and spread either within the farms and between farms. And the second one, basically, the root actually quite extend system. It's grow bigger and bigger year by year. And the third one I want to highlight, because the tillage implement or machinery implement, it can go through between farms, and also if you move in machinery, it can go through within the farms and between farms if you are moving machinery between farms. And for irrigation areas, even with if we have big thunderstorms, the berry can be carried away to a long distances. So these are very, very common mechanisms of spread. Now, seed production. As I mentioned, overall, every stems give you about 60 berries. And every single berries, we counted about 40 seeds. So basically, each single stem would be about 2,400 seeds. And quite often, because the mother plant have multiple stems, so multiple by how many stems, you're going to have lots of seeds. So it's very important to control Silverleaf Nightshade before the berry form. So in the past, we've been doing we did a lot of biology studies. I just give you a bit of summary of this result. So we bury the seed in the field. So seeds can survive at least 4 years with the bare seed if we bury in the soil. However, because we have intact berries, the time to break down the intact berry would at least need another additional 1 or 2 years. So I already mentioned the seed germination prefer cool temperature, and also prefer alternating temperature between 15 to 30 degrees. And it requires good soil moisture. And this year it's going to be a good one. And also the root system, if because we broken into small pieces, even as small as 1 centimeter's length, and it can send up a new shoot. So this is translated into in old days cultivation. Cultivation without follow-up chemical applications, we are going to break a root system into smaller pieces. And in that case, it will be millions of new shoots coming up. Now, I just want to touch base on the principles how to manage the Silverleaf Nightshade. First and foremost, I want to highlight the timing of the control. So I hope at the end of this webinar, you can remember early flowering. So I mean early flowering, if you look at the plant closely, not sit inside the youth, look at distance. So if you look closely, yes, at this plant, you only have a few flowers. You can't see any berries. And this is the perfect time to do any sort of control options, either grazing, spraying, or slashing. In this case, if you have these control options, you're not going to have a berry set. But this is going to regrow depending on what sort of control option you have. And if we are only sitting in the yield to look distance to the cropping area, cropping paddy, you saw flowers, yes. But if you have a closer look, you see already green berry forms. So this plant showing it's too late to control. Even though you can burn the top at this stage, but the berries already have viable seeds. So it's too late to have 100% seed set control. So I want to show you some nice pictures we did through a demonstration with land care group. So on the left-hand side, you have a really good timing of the first action of control. And on the right-hand side, it's a bit too late. Even though the plant was killed by the herbicide, but you have so many berries already mature and produce viable seeds. So you can imagine what sort of you're going to result differences between the two treatments. So this is only, you are using the same chemicals. The only differences was the timing. So we try why the timing give you such a good control in terms of seed set control. So we compare different chemicals and compare different timings. One is at early flowering, and one is at the early berry stage. So at the flowering time, we put different chemicals. It's very effective in controlling the seed set, sterilize the seed. However, if you delay a little bit internal control, even though you can control certain level of viable seeds, but you still have high level viable seed in the berries. And now I just want to touch base in that manual John and I wrote, we emphasize a lot on dual actions. So what does mean dual actions? Because it's a perennial weed, we have seed set and we also have root. So first actions, we have to target the seed set. So first action targeting seed set, we have to do at early flowering in order to achieve 100% seed set control. So there are a range of options, including chemical or non-chemicals, you can use as early control options to stop seed set. And then you have to come back sometime before the frost comes, or just go with the after the temperature drops, sometime in autumn or in late April, depending on locations. We had to come back with another control options, and it can be chemicals, and it can be non-control options, depend on the level of infestations. And this is the one we did in a very dry year. We did the dual actions and was really good result. And this one without dual actions, even in the dry years, I think was in 2006, and still a lot of Silverleaf Nightshade plants come out. And we had a demonstration across the country. This time in the sheep yard. We did. We listed at the start of application just a few flowers. On the November 14th. So we do the dual actions, one early, one late, with both glyphosate. So one early in November and one late in, I think was in April. And this is the 1 month or 2 months after the application, or 3 months, or 2 months, sorry, of the first glyphosate. And this is the 1 year after. Even with this so cheap glyphosate options, even soft chemicals, you are achieving good result in terms of thinning down the populations. However, you're still seeing some Silverleaf Nightshade regrowth after a year, because in 1 year you're not going to exhaust the root system, because the glyphosate is not going to have a lot of damaging effect on the root system. And then we try this followed by Grazing Extra. Grazing Extra contain the active picoran, and picoran is very effective on the root system. So early options, early action, we have the glyphosate, and this is 2 months later after the glyphosate application. And after that, the Grazing Extra apply in autumn, and this is 1 year later. It's really hard to see Silverleaf Nightshade plant here. I think there's one on the edge of this photo. So this is because the picoran product, it's really effective on the root as compared to the glyphosate. So the reason why we need a second application of herbicide, this is because the plant started shutting down in autumn, and most chemicals apply onto the leaves going to carry through to the root system to have the impact on the roots. And I think a lot of growers now have either weeded system or weed seeker optical spraying systems. And in majority of the cases, the Silverleaf Nightshade infestation are still often scattered populations. I think if you can access to these optical sprayers, certainly you can use either those picoran, expensive picoran product for quick, effective control of Silverleaf Nightshade. There are a few non-chemical options I just want to touch a little bit. Certainly, I want to highlight, if you have Silverleaf Nightshade, don't leave it bare. You still have to crop something. As long as you can grow something to compete with Silverleaf Nightshade, the production of the stems or berries is going to be much less. And there will be question: are we going? Is cultivation going to be effective? My answer is: if you only rely on cultivation, you're going to make things worse. Certainly, we have to follow by rigorous herbicide applications. because the cultivation you're going to break into pieces, you will have Silverleaf Nightshade come up like this. And the sheep, actually in New South Wales, quite a few growers are trying to use sheep to graze Silverleaf Nightshade in the summer. However, I had to highlight the timing is paramount important. Do not graze the Silverleaf Nightshade when you see berries already formed. So if you are using sheep to graze the Silverleaf Nightshade, certainly pay attention to the timing, the grazing pressure, and certainly can be useful according to a few farmers in New South Wales, especially in those dry years. There's nothing on the paddy but Silverleaf Nightshade. And actually, I did the feed value test. And as you can see from table, I just want to highlight actually protein, not too bad, about 11%. And the metabolic energy, about 10%. So this is a photo I took from the cropping paddy, farmer's paddy. So sheep actually nip all the leaves. So it's really behaving as a very good biological control agent. What a biological control agent do, it's pretty much the similar thing, just year in, year out, defoliate the leaves. But I really want to highlight again, the photo on the left showing grazing is really too late. You got the berries everywhere, it's going to be carried everywhere. However, on the right-hand side, because the nightshade plant is quite young, so you have really clean feces. And Jessica asked me to present a little bit update on the biological control agent. And John Heap was very active in importing this agent from South Africa to Australia. And this is because this agent basically is called Texas potato beetle. So South Africa actually imported from Texas, I think at least 40 years ago. And they have been very successful in South Africa. And over years, they built up high population numbers, and year in, year out, defoliating the leaves, seeing the populations nationwide Silverleaf Nightshade declining after about 20 years of introduction. And we imported the agent, I think it was in 2019, through Caltrop Uni. And Greg, together with John and myself and a few others, certainly we had to put the insect in the strict quarantine, and we evaluate the impact not only on the weed, but also on a lot of native solanums. I think there are about 170 native solanum species, and we had to evaluate it. And also we have a lot of solanum plant like eggplant, tomatoes, potatoes. Initial results was very encouraging, affecting the Silverleaf Nightshades beautifully. However, there's one problem came out after years of screening. There's one particular variety of potato, Nadine. This variety also is quite popular in Australia. It's very susceptible to the beetle. So after discussion with funding bodies, the result is a risk too much. So we can't afford another Canto in Australia. So basically the release of this beetle basically canned. So basically come to a full stop. And Greg basically continue the search for agents. And he told me there were two promising agents on the pipeline. One is a mite from Argentina, and one's a laceback in Texas. However, in this year, as everybody knows, research has been quite slow because of COVID-19. Initial research in Texas showing that Nadine is not preferred by the bug. However, certainly need a more field evaluation to confirm that. So basically, if everything are favorable in the field testing, either in Argentina or in the US, and then there will be a long process trying to prepare document to import the agents. And then after importing the agents, we had to do the screening again with a lot of natives and a lot of Solana crops. So it's not going to be a quick process. I think this is my final, the last third slide. I just want to summarize this early dual actions. So here you can see early actions and late actions. So early actions, I'm talking about the growth state will be prior or just at flowering. So internal timing now actually will be the good timing, depending on the locations. And then you can have multiple control options. And then the main purpose is one is to stop CSAT. And the second is going to exhaust the root system over time, over years. And the late actions was going to target the regrowth. So internal timing was between the March and April, depending on the location and the season. And you can use a knockdown herbicide or pick rank herbicide. And this one, the main target is going to work on the root to kill the root system. So this is just a quick summary. So it's a perennial weed. We can't expect to control it in 1 year. And I want to highlight the farm hygiene is quite important, especially if you have a stock in the system. And if you are moving machinery around between paddies or between farms. And we need a dual action approach. Single action certainly is not enough because either early or late, you're not hitting, you're not going anywhere. And I think I highlight enough in terms of timing for effective control. So we certainly need to design the management programs depending on your infestation is heavy or scattered. And you certainly will need a few years consistent effort. Certainly depend on level of the infestation. Again, it also depends on what sort of chemicals you're using. And feel free to have a look at this manual. I'm not sure we did print about 4,000 copies. I think all run out. I'm not sure there are any more hard print copies. Yeah, I'm more than happy to have any, if you guys have any questions to contact me, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Hanwen. That was excellent. I actually learned a few things there, which I didn't already know about Silverleaf Nightshade. As mentioned, yeah, feel free to write your questions in the chat function. Otherwise, we will move on, and Hanwen's going to stay around until the end of the webinar, and he can answer questions then as well. Okay, so hopefully you can now see my slides. which I shall. I figured out what to do. Someone just yell out yes.
Yes, we can see it, but there is a question there, Jess.
Oh, excellent. Can you tell me what that one is? Because I've lost my screen now.
Is it possible to control roots without using piclorans, such as in grazing hills?
Great question. I can't answer. Hanwen, do you have a comment there, or it might be one that Chris might be able to answer at the end?
I wish there is. The problem is because roots is really below the ground, and yeah, in the grazing areas, because yeah, to kill root, the only option is to use chemical. However, if you using non-chemicals, the only way is going to exhaust root system over years. So that means you really have to be on top of the vegetation growth. You have to keep defoliating leaves through either grazing or other non-chemical options. Otherwise, yeah, as far as I understand, there's no other options you can kill the root.
Thanks, Hanwen. If there's no other questions at the moment, I'm just going to do a super quick run through just 4 extra weeds to be on the lookout at this time of the year. And I'm sure that most people might be familiar with 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them. So Caltrop, I'm probably pretty sure that everyone is very familiar with this one. And if not, you should be. If you've got it on your property, you really do want to get it controlled. Obviously, the pictures there show you it's got a hairy stem. It's a prostrate weed that will grow along the ground. It's got lots of stems that grow from one taproot. Has a little yellow pretty flower with 5 petals, and obviously the prickles, which is what everyone would be familiar with. And as you would be aware with this one, it's a nuisance around farmhouses, town sites, railway lines, car parks, along cycling paths, and all those kind of recreational areas. So it's one to be on the lookout, and to be on the lookout for it now. Timing is key with all weed control, and unfortunately this one likes to pop up right around this time of the year as well. And we all know that we're real bit busy at this time of the year with Christmas, but unfortunately if we let these things go, we're not actually going to get anywhere with the control of these weeds on our properties. Another one to be on the lookout for is khaki weed, one you might not be as familiar with. It's actually an alert weed. You're meant to let your local landscape office know if you do have it. So it is, again, another prostrate weed. So it has stems that can go to at least 60 centimetres long, and it actually can also develop stem roots from the stems where those stems hit the ground. So the leaves, as you can see by the pictures, are like an oval shape, and they have red purpley vines, and the short stalks are sparsely haired. So flowers are very small and occur in clusters, and they're surrounded by sharp, pointy, chaff-coloured brackets, and the fruit is a prickly, chaff-coloured burr, as you can see by those images. So again, as you can imagine, it's a very nasty prickle that can cause issues with animals with their in their feet and their mouths, as well as degrading wool if you happen to get it in your sheep. Innocent weed is another one that is probably up and possibly even flowering and getting its burrs out at this time of the year. So it's a bit more, it can either be erect or a spreading grass, and it can grow up to 60 centimetres high. I don't know if you've ever had one of those innocent weed prickles in your finger, but they are really quite painful. The stems radiate from the base and are hairless and flattened. The leaves grow to a length of about 20 centimetres with a width of about 5 to 8 millimetres, and the leaves are small with fine serrations. And the flower heads are 3 to 8 centimetres long, and the fruiting bodies are in clusters of straw-coloured burrs with barb and purplish spines. So love to grab hold of your socks as well, that one. It's not quite like love grass, but it it is very spiky and loves to stick into your socks. Again, all these last three ones are berry type weeds, so yeah, causing irritations with animals in their hooves or their feet, as well as in their mouths, and contaminating fodder, hay, and also the wool on sheep. One last one that you may or may not be familiar with and to be on the lookout. I know there's a lot more of this one in the sort of the northern York region, not so much closer to Adelaide, but up towards Port Augusta, Buffel Grass. So something that you should really consider ensuring that you look at controlling on your property. It's a long-lived tussock with a deep, tough root system. And some plants can grow to 1.5 metres tall, but you more commonly see them at about 1 metre. They've got tough branched stalks with swollen bases and produce leaves that are hairless or with finely sparse long hairs. So flower heads are cylindrical, erect, dense, spike-like, and they can be either 2.5 centimetres long up to 15 centimetres long. So there's quite a variety in length in the seed heads. And the colours of the flowers come in a variety of colours from straw to purple. So this one is classed as an environmental weed due to its rapid growth rate, its fast maturity, its prolonged flowering period, and its prolific seed production and dispersal rate, its long seed dormancy, and its drought tolerance and grazing resistant. So those are I just wanted to throw a couple of extra weeds that people should be on the lookout for. And just a quick reference to some really good items that you might want to add to your collection. The Weed Control Handbook for declared plants. It's a PIRSA, these are both PIRSA created things. So the Weed Control Handbook has got a list of all the different declared plants and what you can use to control them, what means, and in what situations, whether or not it be spot spraying in an environment sort of paddock or a broad acre spray in paddocks. PIRSA have also created a SA Weed Control app, which you can download onto your phone, which has this information as well. So feel free to Google the PIRSA Weed Control Handbook or PIRSA Weed Control app and get them, or contact your local landscape SA board, and they'll be able to help you with getting some more information. So before, if there was any other questions on any of that, if not, we are about to pass over to Chris Butler. So what you can actually do is when he sort of pops up on your screen, which you can see him, you can right click on Chris and you can click pin, which makes him extra large on your screen, and it puts everyone else to the bottom, because he's not going to be sharing any slideshows. He's actually just going to be sharing himself. So I will pass over to Chris, who has now unmuted himself, and I'm thinking he's going to turn his camera on. Otherwise, I'll...
Okay, there we go. Thanks, Jess. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I've got you loud and clear.
Okay, that's great. So we can get started, and Dr. Wu has given us some really, really good information about Silverleaf Nightshade. It is a long-term persistent weed. My first thing to really talk about is biosecurity. So try and keep it out. If it's not in, keep it out. All those other weeds that Jess mentioned, same thing. If they're not in, keep them out. So if you buy stock, put them in a small holding paddock for a period of time and let them empty out. The Silverleaf Nightshade seed can stay in stock for up to 32 days, but most of it comes out in the first 4 or 5. So then be vigilant, and that's what you have to do, is check your paddocks, make sure you haven't got any weeds. If you see them, get out and spray them. So chemical control, it's a measure really of where you are and what sort of property you have. The dual active chemicals like Tordon 75D or Grazing, those things with a hormone spray and a perchloram in them, and if they've got an aminopyrrolid in them as well, are quite residual. And for some plant species, they're residual for up to 5 years, depending on who did the spot spraying, because it's rate related. And so I have seen a local paddock where artichokes were sprayed with Tordon, and about 3 or 4 years later, you could see all the round rings in the paddocks. No artichokes, but you could see all the round rings in the paddocks where the peas were. So be very, very cautious about how you approach the use of any of those residual herbicides. Yes, they're good for controlling the root of tomato weed, but you do have to have the situation to use them in. They're very dangerous around trees, shrubs, anywhere where you want to plant native trees in the future and you're trying to control your tomato weed. Don't use those products because they'll still be there for the trees when you plant them. And most of them, if you read the label, they've all got bush control effects as well. So just to have a look at a few other things. Personal safety, if you're going to go spraying, please use the proper equipment. Leather boots, not so good if you spray them all day and then leave in them for the next week. A set of these gloves, which are disposable nitrile gloves rather than disposable food grade gloves. So they're green because they're chemically impervious. The big red PVC gloves are quite good as well. Chemicals for the control of Silverleaf Nightshade on a spot spray basis. So the first one is Star Rain, and Star Rain, there's lots of other names for Star Rain as well now because it's off patent, but Star Rain is very good at Caltrop, it's very good at Silverleaf Nightshade, Blackberry Nightshade, and quite a few other weeds as well. You just have to get it right, follow the label directions obviously, and I'll come back and talk about wetters and surfactants in a minute. So there is a product, Vigilant 2, which comes in this small pack, and that's a wipe-on product. So it has a little brush in the top, and you give it a squeeze and then wipe it on the weed. So it's pretty accurate in its placement, and it works very well. It does have perchloram in it, and where I've used it before in a vegetable garden on a trial basis, it had an impact on susceptible plants, tomatoes, potatoes, legumes, for a couple of years after. Even though I only wiped it on the plant, it obviously washed off onto the ground and became soil residual. For the smaller growers, smaller farms, this sort of little spray bottle is quite handy for 20 or 30 Silverleaf Nightshade plants at a time. I used glyphosate in that and sprayed a couple about a fortnight ago, did a very good job. You're not dealing with much chemical then, you're not mixing up much, so you don't have to leave it laying around. So all sorts of sprayers are pretty important. This one's got a squirt function and a spray function. Either work quite well. Glyphosate, Roundup, Glyphosate, many products. You can buy them ready mixed in all sorts of containers in any store. We've now got one that's 60% in strength with 3 different salts in it and an excellent surfactant package all the way down to a 360, and then I think in the hardware stores you can get 12%. So there's a whole plethora of glyphosates available, and that product works pretty well. Most of the glyphosates today have a surfactant built in, so you don't need to buy a surfactant and a glyphosate to use it. And another product which is a pretty good standby for a lot of weeds, so that includes thistles, Salvation Jane, the Caltrop, and a few other weeds, is Camber M. So that's a mixture of dicamba and MCPA. It has a short period of soil residual because of the dicamba. It has MCPA LV in it, which is a pretty good herbicide. It will take the top off of tomato weed pretty effectively. So then we go back to look at control. Control of tomato weed in my book is all about persistence. If you get a rain in the summertime, if you get a rain of ½ an inch or more and the soil becomes moist into the deeper soil zones and the roots can pick it up of tomato weed, they'll send up new shoots. Great time to go and spray them. The most effective paddocks of tomato weed in the local district, high concentrations of tomato weed that have been affected, the farmer took the policy of every time he had a summer rain, he'd go have a look, and if there was tomato weed emerged, he would just go and spray it. And all he used for his spray program was a medium rate of 2,4-D-amine. So that root exhaustion that Dr. Wu talked about, where you just keep spraying the top off, it can't receive sunlight, it can't make carbohydrates, and it can't send those carbohydrates back to the root to push a shoot up next year. It still takes probably 10 to 15 years. Broadacre farmers have a much better option than perhaps a lot of other people, but you do have to be out there all the time. So this piece of equipment here, Jess, am I still going? There's notes coming up on this computer. So this is a really good quality 5-litre pressurized spray. You pump it up with this handle and then away you go. The nozzle I put in mine is a flat fan nozzle. Rather than the cone nozzles and all the other nozzles you get with the cheap ones, the flat fan nozzle is very, very controlled and effective. If you buy the right nozzle nowadays, you don't get so much drift. These are pretty good. They don't look like this anymore, but they're available from local machinery dealers, and they're of course upgraded. That one's about 15 years old, still working really well. First thing to do with all of your spray equipment is wash it out when you're finished, and then it'll last a lot longer. In desperation, if you get desperate and you need to get a bit deeper into the ground to knock the tops off nearer the roots, this little hand grubber, very, very handy. Available at local hardware stores in a wooden handle version, and available at the reject shop when I looked in there one day in a fiberglass handle version. And you can get a fair way into the ground and knock that bit of that stem and root out, and that really helps to knock the tops off. Persistence, persistence, persistence. With people who have got shrubs, vines, trees, I did try and check up to see what we could use as a straight knockdown that wasn't glyphosate and wasn't any of these other hormone-based sprays, because they get a bit dangerous around the garden. And there probably is effectiveness out of a product called Buster or Biffo, which is a glufosinate product. I think it'd take the top off. I'm going to do a trial on myself shortly to see whether that's the case. And organically, I suspect that Slasher would probably take the top off as well. So Slasher's a non-systemic type spray that's been released recently, and I think it would be good enough to take the top off a Silverleaf Nightshade as long as you sprayed it thoroughly and wet it reasonably well. So in small areas, that might be worth a bit of a fly. Star to glyphosate, Camber M, 2,4-D, those are the common products. Multiple spraying. Don't let the plant get past flowering. I agree with that fully, because if it does, you're in strife. Commercial farmers with boom sprays with bigger operations have a few other products that we can mix and match together. So glyphosate and copper 475, which is a compatible type of amine, would probably work pretty well on Silverleaf Nightshade. Optical boom, there are a couple in the lower north, but there aren't too many of them, and I'm not aware of any contractors. So yep, so those are the chemicals. Wetters and surfactants. Dr. Wu showed us that the leaf and the stem is hairy, it's hard to wet. Often we're dealing with a time of the year when plants can be under moisture stress. Even though they look quite good, they can be under moisture stress, and this weed is a real survivor. That's why it's such a doer in our climate, South Africa, Texas. So as I said, most glyphosates have got some surfactant in, but there are many surfactants in the market that can really make some of these pesticides wet plants up better. So today we've got a lot of oils, and in a home garden or a small block situation, you could use some pest oil, and that would work quite well. You can buy small containers of wetter as well, or the larger ones. We've got products like Hasten, Outright 770, and all their competitors with different names that are really good. They're oils. And then an old favourite is Pulse Penetrant, which also is a very good wetter. Pulse is probably more used for waxy weeds like gorse and bracken, and so the oils like Hasten and Outright 770 are favoured in this circumstance, because I think they'll do a better job of getting the pesticide onto the leaf surface. Jess, that's about my lot. You know, you've had a really good rundown on the plant, why it's a pest.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. We do have a question. So hopefully, Andrew, you got your answer about the wetters in what Chris just mentioned. He did also, Adam has asked if there's any other options instead of picrolum to get to the roots. They're looking at planting natives and don't want to sterilise the ground. No, just persistence. Sorry, but there is no other option of anything that gets down to the root of tomato weed. So you've just got to try and really get on top of it before you start planting natives. This weed is tough enough to grow under some natives, so in a native planting you need to make sure that you include your understory. So Rhagodia parabolicas, wattles, Bursarias, all of those plants which make great understory, don't leave them out of a native planting, because they will compete pretty well with Silverleaf Nightshade. Excellent, Chris. That's a great answer. Was there any other questions from people? I saw someone put their hand up and then put their hand down.
Can I come in?
Yeah, absolutely, Hanwen.
Yeah, because I actually drop out at the adjuvant section. I just want to show you a couple research we did. Just a couple slides. See what happened. Which one? I think it should be this one.
If there are any other questions, people, just write them in the chat and we can answer them.
Can you see the image now?
Yes, yep. We can.
So we did have an honor student comparing only 3 adjuvants. We have compared the common adjuvant called uptake hasten or oxyfluorophane, and they appear trying 2 different chemicals. This one is Chris was talking about. This is the styrene. And they appear from this trial we have seen to be uptake seen to be more effective than the other 2. And after that, we did a color translocations comparing different dyes. We compare 4 adjuvants, BS1000 hasten uptake, And this top lead is the control. And the middle one is with the BS1000 hasten and uptake. And this photo showing up in the cross section is D. So the dyes only touch the surface, the hairs, not really get into the middle section of leaf tissues. However, we try this Sprinter, another non-ionic surfactant, and it's actually quite damaging, actually sending dyes into the leaf tissues. However, after the research, we haven't really tried this surfactant in the field situations. So if you guys are happy to try that one, I would really love to know what the result come out.
This is Sprinter you're talking about?
A Sprinter.
Yes. So Sprinter is not much different to pulse penetrant. They're both organosilicates. And so I wouldn't expect there to be any in the field difference between them. But another one I'm suggesting is outright 770. But that's to do a trial on surfactants would take about 3 years just to load up the different types. So this is really good information though. So Pulse is available in small containers, 1 litres and maybe under in hardware stores. So if Pulse is going to do a good job, that's great. Whether it takes the chemical through and Dr. Wu, just on your slide before, the oxafluorofan is not a surfactant. It's a
As a spike. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a Group G product, and it's probably anti-activity because it would burn the leaf so quickly. There's probably less time to get those systemic herbicides in there, and that may be reflected in that 5.1 result. And yet with fluroxapyr, it looks like it did a really good job. So, you know, it's really hard to get on top of that. But that's what I come back to. I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of difference. You'll notice that there was a significant reduction in plant populations with all of these. So persistence is really the message I want to give people. If you get a chance to spray your tomato weed while it's flowering and you've got to go back 8 weeks later because some more came up, go back 8 weeks later and do it again.
Yeah, just on that, the same question asked about, in addition to a pickle-rain product, any other chemicals can kill the root. I think if you want talking about chemicals, I can certainly glyphosate is sort of chemicals translocated. If you applied, like you have one early, one late. If your late application of glyphosate, there have been studies. If you apply late in autumn, and glyphosate is going to be translocated together with your carbohydrate and go into the root, performing certain level of killing effect. But this sort of killing effect, as compared to the pickle rain, of course, it's much less. So if you are relying on glyphosate to kill the root, certainly it would take much longer as compared to those Grazing or Totem 75D products.
Yep,
Excellent.
agree.
Thank you. Not sure if there's any other questions. I think the main messaging for tonight is timing and persistence. So make sure that you know where your silverleaf nightshade is on your property and you get onto it early and you persist with controlling it throughout the whole season. I think that's about it. If there's no other questions, we'll say good evening and thank you very much for joining us, everyone. We really do appreciate you taking out your time this evening and joining in on this webinar. We hope you learned something. And it will be available on our website to view later as well. So thank you very much. I'm going to stop recording now.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good. Thank you.